Welcome to Dialogue. I'm Xu Lan. People around the world have been closely following the 20th National Congress of the Communist Party of China and have been paying special attention to the report delivered by Xi Jinping. Ms. Marsela Musabelliu, Executive Director of the Albanian Institute for Globalization Studies, has also followed the meetings closely and joins our program today to share her views of China's blueprint for the next 5 years. What does she think of this important meeting? How is China's economy evolving? And what does she think of China's whole process democracy? I also spoke with Professor Xue Lan, Dean of Schwarzman College at Tsinghua University, for his thoughts on these topics in the second half of the program. Hello, Marsela. Welcome to the discussion. I know you have been following closely the National Congress and also the speech, the report given by Xi Jinping. So tell us what impressed you the most.
Yes, of course, you're right. This event is followed around the world, not only for the ones that study and follow China events, but for all the rest who study current events and geopolitics. Indeed, it's the largest political party in the world with 101 years of existence and 73 years in charge of the most populous country in the world. So yes, of course, there is much attention and there is much scrutiny. For my side, what I would highlight the most is the words development and modernization. Those were used several times in this report, and for the situation where the world stands right now, those are some words that we are all longing for, and it is interesting and wonderful to see that those words are the blueprint for the China's future in the 5 years ahead, but also even more. And of course, it was the sense of mission that you could see coming from the #1 policymaker of China, and also action and vision for the future. And of course, it was an analysis of the current state of affairs in retrospective, but also in perspective. So yes, we were all interested to see where China is headed, and it has resonated all around the world and in my country as well.
In the past, we often see speedy or rapid economic growth. That is a major character of the Chinese development. But nowadays, we are seeing the Chinese leadership, the Chinese government, they are stressing very much about this, let's say, high quality growth and sustainability or balanced approach, like narrowing the gap between rich and poor, and also poverty alleviation, etc. Tell us more about this thinking behind this shift of the pattern from rapid growth to high quality growth.
It comes to mind a saying of some years ago in the poverty eradication program. It was not a slogan, but it was a blueprint. No one will be left behind. So this resonates immensely with the rest of the world who are trying to achieve so much more and the much needed economic development. So what I could see from the start of the 20th Congress with the report and so on is quality over quantity, if we have to summarize it that way. And if there are, I would say, 2 or 3 words that would characterize Chinese economy are resilience. The Chinese economy is very resilient. We have seen also during the pandemic crisis, innovation driven, especially in the past decade, and of course reform and opening up. And all of these were mentioned in the report, and it was said that it needs a lot of political courage to go that way, but they are taking charge in order to do it. So this resilience and innovation driven, and of course last year the dual circulation program that was placed. So all of this make for decent economic guidelines on where the country is headed.
Mm-hmm. There's also an important goal, for the Chinese nation, that is, to realize modernization. On one hand, that's the modernization which is common probably in other countries too, the characteristics. And then there are some Chinese features or Chinese characteristics. For example, modernization for 1.4 billion people. I guess that's the scale of modernization. He also mentioned about modernization of common prosperity for all, and also modernization of harmony between humanity and nature, modernization of peaceful development. Tell us more about your understanding of the Chinese style modernization.
Well, I could see it's a whole process. Democracy is a whole process, consultation of people's needs and people's desire to have a better life. With the years, different Chinese generations have been requesting for more and different needs. So the policy is going to be adapted to these needs of the most populous country in the world. But as you said, if we measure the scale of making these policies tangible for 1.4 billion people, then the way ahead is it's very imperative. It's very serious, and it will take into account all the situation in China and outside China. In fact, the second centenary goal or the first centenary goal that were achieved last year are going into this path of modernization. Up to now, it was quantity. Now there should be quality.
Mm-hmm. In the report, Xi Jinping also talked about the Chinese opening up, and that will continue to help grow the economy. He also talked about China will stick on the right course of economic globalization. China will continue to contribute to this open global economy. China is now the largest trading nation of goods, and China is a very important partner for about 140 economies around the world. So what does that say, or what do you make of the Chinese attitudes or Chinese policy toward the outside world or toward this rest of the world?
From where I'm coming from, this is more than welcomed, because what we are longing for is development, investment, interchange. We cannot afford at this point in time sanction, disruption, and conflict. So from where I'm coming from, and also from the businesses that our institute has interviewed, all these efforts are more than welcome. What we need is more openness, more inclusiveness, and of course, win-win cooperation, especially in the global value chains. So if we put into what already has been built, difficulties, if we put under them obstacles, then nobody is going to win. This interdependence that we have created cannot be disrupted. Otherwise, the consequences, especially for developing countries, it's going to be enormous. So we are pushing forward as much as we can in order to have better quality of trade, more intensified trade relation, more intensified people-to-people exchange, more intensified business-to-businesses exchange, because we know that the spillovers will only benefit us. But China is doing much more than that in practical terms. Let's remind the Belt and Road Initiative, for example. So if the project along the Belt and Road Initiative are fully implemented, there are the potential for lifting millions out of poverty. So this it's going to benefit the countries along the route. So what we need right now, what we should do right now, is intensified cooperation, intensified contacts, and of course, openness and inclusiveness. Barriers will only harm us.
Mm-hmm. In the report, Xi Jinping mentioned about the Chinese, say, people's democracy in the whole process. He says it is the essential attributes of socialist democratic politics, and it is the most extensive, real, and effective democracy. What's your understanding of those words, in particular, overall, the Chinese idea, the concept of a people's democracy here?
Unfortunately, many in the world especially in the Western world, has been led to believe that China and democracy are mutually contradictory. However, this is also pushed as a narrative, especially by media and sometimes academia. I believe that democracy should be judged of how much people's needs and wishes are being fulfilled by their government. It should serve as an end goal rather than a fixed format upon which government and people rely. Democracy is not a monopoly of anyone. Democracy is enshrined in the richness of humanity. Every country's reality is different, every country's needs are different, and every country's historical moment are different. And the point is that for those who judge differently, I would highly recommend for them to visit China themselves, to see how China is doing, to ask citizens of China how they think and how they feel about their past and their future, to see the approval rating that the government has, and to speak to them one-on-one, because usually the narrative is done by people who have never been to China. So that is a gap that we need to narrow. On the other hand, I can tell you my own experience, because many years ago, I used to live for some time in China, and I would ask my friends and my colleagues one simple question. Do you think, or are you sure that you live better than your parents? And they all would say yes. And I would ask them, do you think that your children will have a better life than you, will live better than you? And the answer was again, yes. So to me, that is what democracy should be, fulfilling people's needs and aspiration of having a better life and a dignified life.
Yeah, you mentioned a very interesting point, Marcela. If you look at the Chinese policy or the Chinese development, the Chinese government, one of their priorities, top priorities, is poverty alleviation. Basically, they think very much about the people, in particular the people on the streets, the people probably in far-flung area, mountainous area. The idea is like no one should be left behind. And if you look at the emphasis on common prosperity, basically they said that, yes, you have people who are able, who are lucky probably, and they get rich fast. But there are people who are not that lucky, who are less privileged, and that should not also be left behind. So common prosperity, narrowing the gap between rich and poor. I guess that's also a reflection of the will of the people.
Well, I believe so, because otherwise there would have been contradictions or burden along the way. We go back to the path of from each according to their skills, to each according to their needs. So we, as a society, as human beings, we cannot let the least fortunate of us suffer the consequences. We should help them, we should integrate them, and of course, the better this is done, the better we see how a government or a system works, because at the end of the day, to each one according to their needs, it's the duty of the society, is the duty of the community, and of course, it's the duty of the political establishment to direct the community into that path. But when the will of the society and the political establishment are on the same path, of course, then there are no boundaries to achievement.
Well, thank you, Marcela. Thank you for your time and insight. Earlier, I spoke with Professor Xue Lan, Dean of Schwarzman College at Tsinghua University. Stay with us. Welcome to the discussion, Professor Xue. So, what are your takeaways from President Xi's report? Some would say there are no brand new concept or idea or terms being put forward. What do you make of that? They would say there's a strong consistency in terms of the policy making here.
Well, I think, first of all, we have to understand what is this document. In a way, this is really probably the most important policy document for China's development in the next 5 years. And so this is really going to provide the sort of the guidance and directions for the future development of 1.4 billion people. So it's not a news report or something else. So I think that the consistency and the clarity of the report is very critical. I think that we've already seen that there's a lot of uncertainties already there. And I think the last thing that people want is to have more uncertainties to confuse people. So I think the remarkable thing is that maintaining the policy direction and the policy consistency is very clear in this report. So China wants to continue its path in the last 40 plus years in the reform and openness, and China is continue to push for the economic and social development, and of course now with the term of so-called high quality development, and also to engage with the global community and to push for the peace and prosperity globally. So that's sort of the basic message China is trying to convey. And also we also recognize there are some new concepts and ideas being introduced. For example, I think that there's a new term that's used in the report, the Chinese style modernization. So this is something new. I think that, but for people who are familiar with the Chinese policy context, we know that modernization is really a key word in Chinese policy context for many years. I think that in the 1950s, the former Premier Zhou Enlai, I think, used it in the Fourth People's Congress. And in 2013, the third plenum of 18th Party Congress also used this term to talk about the modernization of China's governance. So I think that so this time is propose this new concept is really showing that China now, based on the past experience, wanted to present its own alternative development model, and I think this is the Chinese style modernization. So,
Professor Xue, Chinese style modernization, how is it different from, say, the common understanding of modernization, probably that's also used in other countries, and why China is proposing or stressing Chinese style modernization here?
I think actually the report gave a very, quite some, description, some detailed description of the this, Chinese style modernization. I think first of all, I think it mentioned this is probably, China is the largest country in terms of population. So never before have we seen any countries with such a huge population have achieved modernization. So that's sort of one, defining characteristics of the, the Chinese style. And the second thing is that also Chinese, style modernization is also, led by the, Chinese Communist Party. And so there's a very clear sort of leading force in sort of leading the country, to achieve this, modernization. And also, I think that in this modernization, I think as described in the, in the report, that actually it's not some portion of the population, but rather it's a sort of common prosperity. So basically, want to make sure that nobody's left behind. And also want to achieve the modernization, making sure that there's a a balance, between the economic development and the ecological, prosperity. So in a way that, so this is a coordinated, development with people and also with nature.
Based on the speech, and Professor, you also mentioned about, this is about the vision, the outline for the next 5 years and beyond. So what kind of reforms or policies do you expect, the party and the nation to focus on during the next few years?
I think a very critical, I think new element in this report is to focus on the so-called the high quality development. And really, this is something that we are, I think China, of course, has reached a critical, turning point in China's development. Previously, I think Chinese development, was very much export driven, and also I think consumed a lot of resources and energy and so on. Yeah, and certainly that style of development is not sustainable. So I think over the last 10 years, China has made tremendous effort trying to to change the direction, and so now China wants to make sure that that process will continue, and to make sure that indeed China's development is of high quality, both in terms of with the product and services, but also in terms of the sustainability, and also in terms of its interactions with the global community.
Well, as you pointed out, previously when we talked about China, usually people stress very much about the Chinese, high-speed economic growth. But now, seems China is shifting gears, from rapid development to a more balanced development, with emphasis on, say, income distribution, environment protection, etc. So what do you think is behind the change? It's sort of related to what you mentioned about, like the high quality development. What exactly does it mean in the Chinese context?
Yeah, I think that certainly I think this balanced development in terms of focusing on the income distribution, environmental, and so on. I think first of all, I think we see this shift is so value driven. I think as Chinese people become more developed, people are increasingly paying much more attention to issues of environment and ecological issues. So that's so people value good quality of air and so on much more than before. I think when people are still hungry and people still are still living under poverty. So that's probably the first thing. The second thing is that people's social attitude also changed. I think in the past, people may be more tolerant to income disparity and unequal development. Now people are much more concerned about those issues, and people want to change the situation. So you see that actually now people are really supporting a lot of the good causes in terms of philanthropical efforts and so on to try to address the issue of income disparity and unequal development, and so that's the another force that really is shifting China's development. And third, I think it's also more of the the natural progression of development, and now people are really in terms of their daily life, in terms of the on the market, and people are paying much more attention to the quality of the products, and so they are no longer satisfied with the sort of more of okay quality, and because now people are willing actually to pay for quality. So all of those actually are pushing in the direction of really so-called high quality development, both in the substantive sense of the word high quality, but also in the more broader sense of the social and ecological development.
Yeah, and also during the meeting, China has sent out a message that the country will basically strengthen its work to attract more foreign investment. So tell us, how important is it for Chinese economic development in terms of foreign investment, and what we can do, to attract more investment from overseas?
Yeah, I think that foreign investment is still very critically important. I think as we all know that foreign investment not only brings the capital to China, but also brings the talents, ideas, and also experiences and also markets as well. And so in a way that as a more developed economy, China needs much better integration with the global market. So I think the foreign investment is a very critical element in that process. So I think that as we can see that in the last few years, despite the increasingly more challenging geopolitical situation, China has insisted on really pushing forward on becoming more open to the foreign investment, and also coming out a whole set of new policies to attract more foreign investment. So I think that's more of a very consistent policy that started in the late 1970s.
Yes, of course, it's related to another sector or industries, or you say in education, attracting talented people around the world, driving innovation, and so we can unleash this potential to further grow the economy, the technology, the high-tech sector in particular, and even achieve the goal of common prosperity. In general, any proposals? What should we do? This is a multiple sector issue here.
Yeah, I think probably there are several things that China should really try to do more. I think first of all is to provide more support and more opportunities in research, in basic research and innovation, efforts and so on. Because I think it's those opportunities that really would be attractive to for talented people. So I think that's sort of the first thing that I hope that the government can do more. The second thing is to try to generate better ecosystem for innovation. I think that innovation is a very strange thing. Usually it's not, certain money is needed, but not enough. You need to have a better sort of ecosystem that including but not limited to money and people, and also very diverse kind of a culture and convenient living environments and so on. So many of those things I think would be very helpful for innovation and for attracting people. And the third is China really has to continue to push for openness, to really to attract more international talents, because I think that innovation really needs a very diverse different ideas, and so I think that part of the key to U.S. success in innovation is U.S. has been able to attract global talents, and so if China wants to become a globally sort of innovative country, China should certainly try to be able to attract more global talents.
Mm-hmm. Well, efforts must be made at multiple fronts. Thank you, Professor Xue. Thank you for your insights and time. That's my interview with Professor Xue Lan from Tsinghua University. And with that, we come to the end of today's show. Many thanks to our guests. You can also find us on the CGTN app or on YouTube. I'm Xu Qinduo. Thanks for being with us. See you next time.